welcome. Here we are again. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Me too.
Hey.
Me too.
So we have Andrea and Morgan.
That's
We
right.
got them here today to talk about their experiences as co-parents and things. So why don't you guys just introduce yourselves and give you guys a little bit of your background?
Want to kick it
So,
off?
so,
Sure.
sorry.
I'm Andrea, and let's see. Morgan and I got married. We met here, and then hooked up in New York City, and came back here, and became foster parents, and had a lovely time doing that. Ended up adopting a child we fostered, and then getting a divorce.
Okay. Okay. Got it. What about you, Morgan?
Yeah, Andrew and I have known each other for a long time, probably for like, God, what would it be, 15 years? How old is Balti now? We met at a baby shower. And yeah, so we divorced when Mel, our child, was 5, which is interesting. It's the same age that my parents got divorced, which I was really kind of like, during it, I was like, oh, this is so strange that I'm putting my kid through the same thing I was in, and just thinking about my mindset back then. Um, and yeah, I since moved to Tacoma, and so I live in Tacoma, and Andrea lives in Seattle. Mel goes to school in Seattle. We have 50-50 custody. And so I drive up to Seattle a couple times a week to take Mel to school, which is like a thing. It's tough, but alas, that's what you got to do. Yeah, and then I have a partner, MJ, who I live with and is very close to Mel, loves Mel very much, and is a big part of this as well.
All right. Got it. Thank y'all.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. How did you?
Sure. Yeah. So, all right. So, thinking about co-parenting, I remember I was so attracted to your story. Thank you all for reaching out. One of the reasons why is because something I had mentioned was, you guys have a good co-parenting relationship. Like, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how have you guys navigated, and what do you guys do to keep a healthy co-parenting relationship?
Well, let me just kick off by saying that although our marriage didn't succeed, we always did see eye to eye around our child and the values and what we wanted for her and what was important. So even though things crumbled for us personally, we didn't really have any problems around that, and we really decided to put her first in the marriage because you're kind of floundering and miserable anyway. So you put your child first, and we decided to be peaceful and cooperative, and we have done so without a lot of formal structure at all. In fact, none.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about that. Like you said, you decided. Like, what was that process to decide? I mean, it sounds easy. It was a quick sentence, but like, what was it a process to get to that point?
Of kind of co-parenting together, is that what you mean by
Right.
decide?
Yeah, when you were mentioning like we decided to like make this work, make our daughter the focal point. We're gonna make this co-parenting work. How did you guys get there?
I think it was interesting because it was very fluid for us after we divorced. Like we were really able to be like, okay, this is the plan. Like for example, we have a plan that Mel will attend 5th grade in Tacoma, or 6th grade, middle school. And we had that plan for a long time while we were married too. And it's just something that like Andrea has agreed to stick to, and it's really made it, I can trust her that she will stand by what she says she's going to do, and that's a really big part of it. And I think it's also very fortunate that neither of us really have any egos in parenting. Like we're both very much like, yowza, how do you do this? What do you do? Like this is pretty wild. And yeah, neither of us really ever want to control what happens in the other house as well, so I've told you a little bit before, Sydney, my background is I'm an attorney, and I was a family law attorney for many years. And so I would just see these people be like, he doesn't have my kid eat dinner at 6 p.m. every night like he does in my house. And it's like, you can't think that you can control what happens in the other person's household. So I think that both of us really approach it with a vulnerability and how can we work together in this situation, which is really wonderful.
Okay.
So I have a quick question. So you always hear about adoption. You always hear about it, but nobody ever explains the process to adopt. So I would really enjoy it from both of your perspectives. How was that process like to decide, okay, we're going to adopt from, step by step?
Well, for us, there was no question about deciding to adopt because we had been taking care of Mel as a foster child since she came from the hospital. Okay. She was with us, and we were just kind of waiting for her to get taken away from us for the first few years.
That must have been stressful.
It was, well, yeah, that's what you get into as a foster parent. Your heart is out there, and you might not be able to keep the child you love, but you know why you're doing. So we were sort of just waiting to see if her family members would be able to jump through the hoops of the state, and they weren't able to. So there was no question for us that this was our child, at that point. So
right. And you know the family before? Okay, you get to the family.
We've met the family since through the state. We met the mom, and then through Act of God, we ended up meeting the dad side of the family.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was it's interesting because when I was in law school and I've done dependency work and really been, very familiar with just how horrifically racist it is and problematic it is, and that the system, the whole history of foster care is based on taking kids of color, shipping them to farmland in the Midwest for labor. And so really knowing like this is the system we're in, how are we going to participate in a way that feels okay? And being honest, there isn't a way. Like there really, the love that we have for Mel is, it's the most amazing love to be like, I will do anything for this child. The unconditional love is so powerful, but at the same time realizing someone else isn't getting to experience that every day and her family. So that part was constantly hard. Our social worker that we worked with was like, she was trying, but she was probably a 20-year-old white young woman who, she doesn't know anything from anything. She's not looking at this from a perspective of, how do I find more family members? How do I go out and really advocate for this family? She's being told by the system, oh, there's these white folks, they're great. Just let's have her go to the white folks. That's how I saw the process happen. It was very much like, are you looking for extended family? And Mel actually has extended family that ironically runs the restaurant a half a block from Andrea's house in the Central District. So her family is here and everywhere. And the way the system works, if it's very adversarial and they're like, oh, well, the foster parents can't see the biological parents. And it felt very difficult. But it's also, we have made a real effort to build a relationship with her biological family. She is this amazing grandma. She's called Grandma. She wants to see Mel all the time. She sees her at least once a week and really trying to build up that relationship.
I love that. So you have maintained connections with Mel's biological family.
Well, yeah, it was in her best interest to do so. And we both understood like having a kid grow up and not feel comfortable with their own people is like the worst possible thing I can imagine. Right. So anything we can do, whenever they ask, the answer is yes. You want to hang out with this child? Yeah, we make it possible because I do feel like I love her and I will do anything for her, as Morgan was saying, but I am not enough for her. She needs her own people, her family to navigate this world because it's messed up in ways I don't need to elaborate on. Yeah. And so I can't offer her all she needs to get by and survive and thrive. Okay. And self-love and all the self-knowledge, all those things. So I just felt like I can try and learn and improve myself, and I'm doing that, but the best thing is for her to be comfortable with her own biological family.
Right.
Yeah, sure. I'm fascinated by this because based on what you guys described, there's a difference between foster care and adoption. I thought it was one of the same thing. Like I've always thought that. So I'm happy that you guys are here to tell us this story because I'm like, whoa, okay, so there's a difference.
Yeah, with foster care, the child actually belongs to the state. And the state
Oh.
hires foster parents to take care of the child, basically.
Oh, foster parents is a job?
Yeah, you get paid.
Oh.
You don't get paid enough. It's
Okay, right.
No,
Right.
no, no, no.
Yeah, it's like, wait, side hustle.
Yeah, it's like but you know, there are people who, like, that's one of the rips on foster parents, is that
Right.
they're doing it for the money.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of kids that do the short term. We did short term fostering for a couple different kids as their families, you know, pull it together or do whatever they need to do or jump through the hoops that are being required. And then there are kids that are in it for a long time, and kind of after, I think it's 18 months, if a kid hasn't been able to fully reunite with their parent, they start the termination process. And so a kid will generally be in foster care for 18 months, and then they try to have them find permanency. That does not happen for so many, like really 8 to 18-year-olds. Once kids are getting that older age, it's so much more difficult to find permanent long-term care because many of them have been in the system, and you know, but yeah, there is a difference between adoption, and then there's, like, you can just adopt not through DSHS, you adopt through these agencies that either work with people who, you know, don't want to keep their child, can't keep their baby, to some of the private agencies work with DSHS as well, and then they have a big fee you pay before you can adopt, which is really its own kind of weird part of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like almost, it's like love and family and transactional.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about like how you all think about, like how has, because I don't know if many people think about co-parenting in terms of like adoption. Do you feel like adoption has played a role in your co-parenting experience or anything like that? And also, you know, your daughter is African American. Like, does that play a role in your co-parenting? Or like, how does that work?
I'm just wondering, we were talking earlier about how fluid it was for us and how we've been like vulnerable with each other, and I think that's because we laid the foundation of parenting with that attitude because of those things, because we were foster parents, because we didn't know if we were going to be able to keep this child, because we knew that we shared her from the very beginning with other people who loved her. I think it was easier, like the way people get so possessive with their kids, like, I don't want you to see those people, or I don't want you to be like that. That was never where we were coming from the beginning. So once it was just like another person we were sharing with.
Right.
Okay. And I want to make sure I'm just clear. You adopted your daughter before or after you guys divorced?
And she was 2 years old.
Well, she was 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So before. Okay. I was just curious. I'm really fascinated about this. This is my blood.
Are you gonna adopt somebody soon?
No. No, but it's information like that happens on a daily basis that doesn't get discussed enough. You know, about what families go through. You know, and it's almost like, from my point of view, from my, like, you know, how I grew up, adoption was almost like a very dismissive conversation because it's only allowed for certain people in a certain age, like tax bracket could do that, you know. So that's why I'm really like grateful for y'all being here to break down the nuance of foster care, adoption, you know, things like that. Especially how you guys work together to make it work too. So.
And also, I mean, as queers, like, adoption is a huge thing in our like community. Like, that is how so many people have babies. Like, doing any kind of stuff where you do IVF, like that's usually too much for at least the queers we know. And so adoption is very much a thing. And I mean, the archetype of like the 2 white lesbians it started 2 white lesbians like adopting 6 kids from South America. That was where kind of this archetype of really white lesbians wanting kids and adopting kids of color, in my mind, kind of started. But adoption is such a big thing for LGBTQ folks in general. Like, I do adoptions, and even if 2 people do have a baby, like even if they use like 1 egg in another person's body, uterus, like all of that, it's still recommended to do an adoption of the baby, because especially now, many states are threatening to say that even if you're both on the birth certificate, you're not an actual parent if you haven't actually had a gestational biological part of it. And so queers have to adopt their own children all the time.
Wow.
And the general,
Wow.
yeah, no, it's other kind of transactional thing. It costs $1,500 to pay an attorney to adopt your own child that you have fully planned for. You're married to your partner. This is your kid, but you have to pay this money to adopt them because the threat of the state saying, oh, sorry, we don't recognize gay people. We don't recognize that two women could be on one birth certificate. Like we have the federal recognition in the United States, but state to state, you don't want to take the risk. You don't want to risk going to a state where your kid goes in the hospital and they don't allow you in to see your kid because you haven't adopted them.
Wow.
So yeah, adoption's like very big in the queer community of just from the point of, we're not having babies as much through just having sex, obviously, and that you have to do it to protect yourself from the state.
Right. That's wild.
Well, that is,
Thank you.
Yeah,
for
thank you
sharing
for
that.
it. So Washington State falls in that category that like you have to go through that process, or
No, this is a pretty progressive state.
Okay.
I think that, but we adopted her because she was a foster child and she needed to be adopted. So
Right. Okay.
that was
But-
yeah.
I tried to have a baby with a friend of Andrea's. Like we were gonna try it the home cooked way, cheap way, but and it didn't work.
DIY.
But-
We did.
DIY, exactly. It was absolutely DIY.
Too expensive.
For real. Sounds like it.
No, my friends who got I went to weddings where it's like all the women and all their Guatemalan children. I'm like,
Wow.
this is humiliating. There's something humiliating about this and deeply disturbing. And and that's still like 13, 15 grand right there. So the way we did it is actually the only way it's legit that doesn't cost an arm and a leg to parent.
and that's 13, 15 per child.
Uh-huh.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Man.
You have to really want that kid.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
Love must conquer all.
So let me ask you this, I'm just curious. Like, do you with family? Did you guys have the support you needed with family as you guys were deciding to divorce, and decide to co-parent together? Like, how was the family taking that? How did that go?
I could start. So my family's closest, like my mom's in Seattle. She's very, very involved with Mel's life, and my dad's down here in Tacoma. And I think more than anything, they were just bummed to see us separate. My family really likes Andrea, and we're just like, okay, do what you gotta do, but that's a bummer. But they've been really helpful in terms of like babysitting and caring for Mel. Like my dad will watch her down here. My mom watches her quite often. So my family has been pretty supportive and kind of trying to be involved to help out as much as they can.
Awesome.
I'm one of those queers that basically my family is my chosen family because I left home 3,000 miles away a long time ago. I'm never gonna look back.
Yeah.
But there's a couple people we stay in touch with, but I'm on my own.
I hear you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Connecticut, actually.
Okay.
But my whole family is in North Carolina,
Okay, got it.
and which is not a great place,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Good to know. Yeah, I have some friends moving down there. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I just had a buddy that just moved down there too, and she's already seeing it like, ooh, this might be a bad idea.
Oh yeah.
And she went there for a job, and she's like, okay, I think this is a bad idea.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's like Seattle ain't everywhere. So
Seattle ain't even in
Right.
Washington. Like, it's not all over Washington. That's for
Right.
sure. I hear you. So earlier, I remember, and just from our conversations off screen, there's a conversation around like, okay, if any of our friends who witnessed our marriage would be surprised at how well we're co-parenting. Can you share a little bit about that? what was going on before that doesn't go on.
I mean,
now.
our relationship was very volatile. We did a lot of fighting and arguing. We're both very like dominant, kind of opinionated bitches. And it worked really when we were on the same page. That was sort of magical.
It was great.
But
It was awesome.
but once that wasn't true anymore, it was just a lot of conflict. And I speaking for myself, I was completely exhausted at the time of the divorce, like emotionally wrung out, completely devastated. Just the dissolution of the relationship as they are, it was a rough time and draining and depressing. Like it lays you low. And I felt like being able to communicate in a positive way, in a peaceful way about our daughter was like a lifeline. It was something, you know, that wasn't falling apart, that could be done right, that could be held on to as something positive or moving forward, because it's hard not to look backwards a lot when you're going through a divorce.
Right. Oh yeah. It's
child
encouraged in the system. I imagine you can speak to that, Morgan. But I was thinking something you just said. I just want to like draw attention to. You said your daughter played like a lifeline, and I feel like that is so important. There's so much to that, because I'm thinking about it like, okay, even though their relationship is over, I'm thinking about for me too, right? With my child's father, the relationship is over. But the thing that I do love is that we get to stay connected through our child, and like that's the focus, and we get to feel good about like, oh yeah, he just won his track meet, or oh, he just like did the thing. Look, we're still kicking, and we're not like, you know, at each other's throats, right? So I like what you said. There's some, if people could like see like, hey, you know, there's a reason why you guys came together at some point, right? And it's nice to see the positive part versus, you know, always focusing on that. But that lifeline, I like that. Yeah. What are you thinking about, Morgan?
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting too during our divorce, which was like terrible and awful, and you kind of, I feel like you go through a divorce and you kind of don't even realize how terrible it is till you're kind of on the other side and you're like, Jesus, what just happened? Whew. But I found it very helpful to be able to have someone take Mel halftime. Like I could fall apart when she wasn't there as much. I certainly did fall apart while she was there. I'm not trying to, you know, say that it wasn't tough, but it was very helpful to actually do that co-parenting in that time, to be like, I'm, you know, need some time to grieve. And I would do that grieving when she was with Andrea. And it kind of, that was another interesting way that it almost felt supportive of like, I can't give anymore right now in a way that feels really good, because I'm so exhausted and sad and going through it and trying to work and trying to do all the stuff while you're in this huge emotional upheaval. And I found it kind of almost like the fluidity, which we were able to be like, okay, you take her now, you take her now. It almost felt, yeah, like a bit of reminiscing on, we totally loved each other. We care about each other. We want each other to thrive, even if it's not together, and we want our kid to thrive more. So it's kind of been a magical ability to stay very grounded and focused on Mel throughout kind of everything.
Right. So like, give me an example. I'm trying my best to articulate this, but give me an example of somewhere in your marriage where there was this rift, but when you apply that same issue or problem or whatever to Mel, it like isn't a problem, or like, you know what I'm getting at? Like, where was it was difficult in the marriage, but when you think about Mel and co-parenting now, you're like, this isn't difficult because we choose her to be the focal point and like we choose to get along.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Whether it's like a character trait or like an actual topic.
Like,
yeah, something where there was just a difference, and like, but with Mel, you guys somehow choose to figure it out.
You know, part of me thinks that like we would get, like if Andrea would get mad, I would get mad, and we would both be really mad at the same time, and like both of us kind of wouldn't budge, and we'd just be like, you're such an asshole, you're such an asshole. But I wonder if it's because like raising a kid, it feels very much like neither of us know what we're doing. And so like the problems that come up are not something to ever prove the other person wrong with. They're more like, so, you know, she's having this issue, she's not having a great time reading. What do we do to help her read? And what I see in family law a lot is people are like, well, I decided this is what she should do to succeed in reading, and the other parent isn't doing it what I told them to do, or something like that, where we're like, okay, what can we do to work together? Can you find her a tutor? I'll have, let's try to read a book every day. She reads a book every day, and be able to be like, if it, find a tutor when you can, or if she doesn't read a book that day, it was a long day, who cares?
Right.
So I think it really helps that we're both just trying to figure things out as we go.
Yeah. And we both know, we know each other's weaknesses and where we're likely to stumble and not be our best for our kid or whatever. And I think that instead of trying to take advantage of that and like pile on and prove the other person's a shithead, it's more like, okay, how can we steer clear of this situation? How can we create something that will not be traumatic for our child, where we won't steer it, like drive off a cliff just because we're proving that the other person made a bad decision. It's just to like lay your ego down and be like, all right, I feel like, Morgan and Mel both know that I have a bad temper, and sometimes I just fly off the handle and get really mean for no reason. And I know that if Mel feels really bad about what I've said to her, she might ask to FaceTime with Morgan, and I'll be like, absolutely, because I was just an a-hole to you and you need to talk to your mom. And instead of being like, nah, don't tell her that I was a jerk because I don't want her,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it comes down to like self-management, the ability, like, because we're not going to be perfect, right? We're not going to just start becoming perfect humans just because we have children now. And so I do that too. I saw my mom would do that too, where you like, I know my flaws and they're not going to go away, but I know how to manage them. Like my mom's like, I won't teach you how to drive because I'm going to be too impatient, right? So she goes and finds someone else to help me. So like knowing your limitations and then like working around that, it's such a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely is. I want to bring it back because I'm so fascinated by the foster care adoption. I'm sorry. I'm happy to have two individuals that were involved in that process. I get to learn, right? So you signed up as foster parents and you have a caseworker. How did Mel come into you guys' life? Where it's like a catalog, not a catalog. I don't want to make it sound.
It's kind of, no. It's like when you go through all this rigmarole to get approved to be foster parents, and then at some point they send you a form that basically says, what kind of kids are you willing to foster? And you have to be honest and like what your own patience level is going to be with what age groups or whatever. And for us, I think the only people we excluded were kids of indigenous descent because that's the right thing to do, because they should stay with indigenous families, and really medically fragile we didn't feel like we could handle. And then the other decision is, we knew that if we had like an African American child that we would be creating a problem with that relationship. But is it a worse decision to say, no, I won't foster an African American child, or to foster one and make the mistakes of being a white person trying to raise a black kid, which are legion? So we decided that, it's worse to say, I don't want this kind of kid. So we opened ourselves up. And at that point, we said we wanted a baby and we were open to anything else. And they sent us an email one day. I was out delivering my route. I'm a mail carrier. And I got a little message. Oh, there's a 5-week-old African-American baby girl at Swedish Hospital that needs to go home tomorrow to a family. Are you willing?
Tomorrow?
Yeah. And I said,
yeah.
Was that the first one? Well, Mel was your first one?
And we had no idea what we were doing. And she was like, she was tiny. She was in the NICU.
And she's going home tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
She'd been there for 5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
She was still only 4 pounds.
It was so wild how much they just gave us this baby. Like, it was shocking. We came in and we met her and we sat with her in the hospital for probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. And she was literally 4 pounds. She was so small. And when she was born, she was 1.9 pounds. Like, this baby would be teeny tiny. And we held her and they The only thing I can remember them telling me or us was, well, if she's crying, she's breathing. And that was their like sage advice. And then they sent us on our way. They had to give us a special crib because she was so small. And it was really wild. It was very much that kind of feeling of, yeah, we are some white folks that walked into this hospital and picked up a baby, and we're just given the baby and told goodbye, go. Like, we don't have any questions. We don't want to know anything. I mean, the social worker had been to our house a lot and stuff, but it was just shocking to me. I was like, damn. And I guess maybe that happens when you have a baby too. You just have the baby and then they send you home. But I was just like, don't we need to know more? Don't we need more education or knowledge, or from everything of like how to take care of a baby to her history, her family history, like connections we need to make. They were just like, here you go. And we brought her home, and we had to feed her out of like a teeny tiny bottle every 2 hours. It was really intense. It was very intense. And
it's all power to you. At least I had like 9 to 10 months to figure it out, like, to read a book or something. That's crazy. But I will say they don't really give a lot of that support to anybody. Yeah. I do know my family. Yeah. That's one thing, but like as far as like, am I doing this right? Are you trusting me?
Yeah.
This baby, sure. But yeah, it just makes you feel better. Like
No, I was shocked.
But to get a phone call and like, okay, tomorrow, not like, here, you have a month to think. No.
But then we didn't know. It could have been we had that baby for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
We don't, because we were just foster parents. This baby needed to be released from the hospital, and we don't know if its mom is just sick and gonna get better in a couple of days, or if what happened, this baby is gonna be the rest of our lives.
Right.
You know?
So it's pretty much like what I'm getting. What you're saying is, even as foster parents, you still don't have any established parental.
We have no rights whatsoever.
No rights
You're an employee of the state.
No.
Okay.
Wow, this is so.
Yeah, you have to ask if you can.
All that changed.
Right. But this is like that.
Yeah, you have to.
Like, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Morgan. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, I was like, just that. I didn't want to call it a game, but just that yo-yo. Like, you don't know when you get that call. Like, okay, thank you guys. Let's go ahead and come in.
And then and the state's job, which they do a half-ass job of, is family reunification. Their stated goal is to reunite the child with the biological family. So they would come periodically and take her as a baby to visit with her birth mom, and the social worker we're not allowed to take her because when they wanted to keep us separate. It's really crappy. The system is icky. So the social worker would come and take my baby and drive to a rehab facility where her mom was, and they would spend time, and then the social worker would drive her back. And I just remember that nauseous feeling in the pit of my stomach the entire time she was gone, which was bad because I felt it. It was there. It was my baby being taken away, but I also knew it wasn't my baby, and I had no right to feel this nauseous feeling. That was tough.
More power to you.
Did y'all watch Tiny Little Fires or whatever it was?
I'm reading that right now.
Hey.
Is that? It is. Yes. It is wild, and
it's whatever. Spoiler alerts, but
yeah. And it's really. I will say that it's a huge weight for me every day that she is a Black child, and thinking of the day-to-day things that, she experiences being around white people, like trying to teach her that white people should be feared and that they raise you and love you and are amazing in this realm too, is very difficult to teach her. And to be like, this is why you need to be scared of these white people, but your family is okay. And sometimes your family's not. Like my stupid dad, the first time he met her, touches her hair. And I was like, Dad, you can't do that. And he was like, what? I'm not doing anything. And I was like, no, you actually are. You're doing the same thing every stupid white person, racist. Like, we are trained, and I believe all white people, of course, are racist and all that. And I was like, teaching the family, like, don't touch her hair. Don't say these stupid things. Like, recognize how your lack of community with Black folk now you're imparting that harm, and we are too. And it's really like, it's heartbreaking. And it's love. It's love is so complex. Love is so hard. And there's not a right way to do it ever, but there's like more conscious and trying to make that effort.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how's that been for both of you dealing with the perception of raising a Black child publicly, like, you know, going places together as a family? How's that?
There've been people look, but then I noticed I do the same thing to other people. I was walking down the street and I saw a white adult with a Black kid, and I was like, wait. So it's just hard. I do the same thing with, like, sometimes people can't tell my gender, and they look at me and I can tell what's going on with their eyes, that they're trying to figure out and then I do it to people too. I'm like, oh, what is that? So yes, we do get eyes from, and then every once in a while I have been spoken to in like kind of harsh ways in public by Black people, and I was just like, hey, you know what? I get it. Like, walk away. Like, I'm not gonna engage, but I'm not gonna like fight back because I get it.
Right.
But it's been extremely rare. Like, maybe it's happened in 8 years,
Especially
maybe 2 or 3 times. Yeah. And
Like,
it's just young kids.
More multiracial, more
yeah,
unique
and it's
families.
just people who have their own things going on.
Right, it's
and
not
that.
personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it for sure. I feel the eyes a lot, and I know that she feels it too. Like when I pick her up from school and her buddies are like, is that your mom? And I can see it's tough for her. And she's like, yeah. Or she's even said, I don't know. And I'm like, oh, baby, like, I am your mom.
Yeah.
And why am I white? And we talk about it, but it's definitely like I feel it all the time. And I feel like it's this, it's interesting. It feels very much like a flag of, I'm a white person with a brown kid. And that means my racism and anti-Blackness is on display all the time because I benefited from this system, and Black kids shouldn't get taken from Black families. So it's a lot, and it's complex, and if I feel it every day. And when she was a little baby, people would stop us and be like, and tell us how to do her hair, which I found to be very endearing. I found it to be like a protective, like, don't fuck up her hair. Like, do her hair better. And to me, that was
fine, but the hair, you're eating her and bathing her, but like,
yeah. But it was, I thought that part was very sweet. But yeah, I feel it all the time.
Yeah. What gives you joy though? Like, I feel that weight for you, and I'm just like, what are the things that give you joy day to day?
Mel, she's amazing. She's like brilliant and can do anything she wants. Like, seeing her thrive is such a huge thing, and seeing her, like, she's so beautiful, she's so smart, she's so like able to do whatever she wants, and that to me is the joy. She brings me joy all the time. She also, parenting's tough. Right. There's some times where you're like, brr. And I'll say that's really quick. One thing with co-parenting is there are different rules in me and Andrea's house for sure. And I can see it and I can feel it, and kind of letting what happens in Andrea's house just be like, okay, Dandy does it different. This is what we do here. Right. And that kind of stuff I can definitely see and feel her be like, well, I can do it there, so why can't I do it here? Which makes sense, like it shows that rules are all created and not real. All right. But at one house they're different. But for me, it's definitely, Mel is just amazing.
Yeah, I hear you. So on that topic of like houses, what is your parenting schedule? Like, how do you guys trade days?
So her elementary school is about 5 blocks from my house. Okay. So I come on Sunday. Usually I drive down to Tacoma and pick her up. and take her to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and sometimes Thursday. And then Morgan either picks her up from school Wednesday or Thursday and does the rest of the week.
Got it.
So she either does 4 nights or 3 nights a week, and I do 4 nights or 3 nights.
Yeah, it's tough though, because I have flexibility. I own my own business as a attorney. So I can go up to Seattle and I can stay in Seattle all day on Thursdays and Fridays while she's in school. And if I couldn't do that, it would really make things a lot more difficult. Like it would be really hard. And I would not want to, I don't want to give up that time. I want to be with her as much as I possibly can. And that being in just 30 minutes away makes it's not 30 minutes, it's an hour and a half away on any traffic time.
And as we discussed earlier, the agreement is that Mel will attend middle school in Tacoma, which means that I'm going to have to retire because I'm not going to be weekends only. So I'm going to have to move there. I think. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to relinquish all that time. No way.
Right. That's beautiful.
So you guys touched on the conversation of different cultures, different races, right? White moms, black child. How's that conversation, you guys? If you had the conversation between, it's like, okay, you have two moms, because she goes to school, sees something else, and then come home.
And it's even more confusing because my gender identity is like not quite female, so
right.
I'm her dad.
Okay.
Which is lucky for her because I'm the only one. Like she has plenty of moms, grandmas, you're crawling with. I'm no dad figure.
Okay.
So even though I'm a girl, I'm gonna be the best damn dad I can possibly be.
Okay.
And I'm wearing that label, and so in like some of her different like her preschool, they were super down with that. Well, some of them were, and then they talked to the other ones, and there was a big scene. It was great. And then, but in the elementary school is so progressive, and it's such a, everybody is so into being so progressive that they eat it up. But as she gets older, that's going to be something that's going to be a problem.
Right.
So you just have to navigate that as it comes.
Right. I feel like having different households and different identities, I just really feel like it sets up our kids for being resilient.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What do you think some of the other positive benefits are going to be for Mel as she has this very dynamic, intricate family?
I think she definitely, one thing I see is with her gender, like her gender identity, she really vacillates between doing things that are stereotypically very girly to things that you would expect boys to do, and being both vulnerable and kind of confident. And so I'm excited that I feel like she's been able to explore whatever it is she wants to be in terms of her gender identity or sexual orientation will really avail her of that, of like, okay, frankly, well, I don't know if I should say this, but I don't want her to be straight. I want her to be gay because I think it's
she doesn't get
the best way to be.
The pluses.
Yes. But of course, I'm always like, if she brings a boy home, I am gonna. And it's like, no, Morgan, you can't do that. But yeah, I think that she definitely, she's going to understand that things are not, black and white. And I use that as a very intentional term, that things are very complex, and she's very astute. She pays attention to everything. She will hear me talking on the phone and go tell my partner some version of it that's got some holes in it and not quite right, but she listens to everything. She knows, she's very observant about what's going on, and I think probably navigating her way in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. What's some other advice you have for co-parents, maybe that you share within your community, or any other advice you have?
I just think somebody told me this, and I think it's really important to just not trash talk the other person, or the other person's parents, or the person's partner, or their lifestyle. It does not help your kid.
Right.
That is feel good for a minute for you. It does not.
Right. Yeah. I was raised with my mother saying the worst things about my father. She was just like, would give me cue cards on what to repeat on how terrible he was. And it certainly did no justice. But yeah, and I would also say, kind of taking like the ego or the need to be right out of parenting in general, I think is a good way to do it, because who knows what's right, but especially with someone you're trying to co-parent with, like, hear someone out and try to understand where they're coming from and work together with them, because like your kid will feel all of it. I can see the stuff that Mel has already internalized from everything from conflict when we were married and our arguments to, just tone of voice and what's going on. So like the kids just feel everything.
Right. And that's like the trend. I mean, as we've talked to a number of families, it's recognizing that our kids can pick up so much, and relinquishing the desire to control everything at the other person's household gives you peace of mind, because you're like, I can't control it, just be at peace with it. As long as they're like have a roof over their head and they're getting their needs met and things like that, then like,
yeah.
I mean, now needs met can mean something different to everybody, right? But as long food and shelter and like they're cleaning themselves and safety, all the things. But everything else, when they eat, maybe, as long as they're not hungry, or like if they're eating fried chicken, like
relax.
Yeah.
They will be resilient. That's why I tell him, if there's something I don't have control over, he's going to be very resilient, because he's going to have all these different experiences.
And
I mean,
right,
act that way.
Right.
And to think about what we were raised with, like how I was raised and like what I got through, and like, I lived off hot dogs and top ramen for 2 years as a kid, and it did me. I'm fine. Like that balanced meal idea is something that it happens if it happens. So I'd say, yeah, I like to think back on how I was raised and the things I endured, to know she's going to endure. She will definitely, it's building who she is.
Right.
A quick question. So Morgan, you said that you have a partner right now.
Mm-hmm.
So how's that dynamic been? With the partner.
That individual is also the proximate cause of the divorce.
Okay.
So that's been kind of tough from my perspective. But I had to figure out a strategy to manage, because that person is a beloved parent of my child.
Yeah.
And so, another opportunity for me to figure out how to not attach onto things I can't change anymore. Whenever I pick Mel up, she always is full of wonderful stories about things that MJ has done. And that's okay for me to hear now. A couple of years ago, it was extremely difficult for me to hear, because it was extremely difficult. So I had a strategy where whenever the story would happen, I would just take out my phone and write down everything she said. And that way I wouldn't be making any facial expressions or responding in any way. And she just thought I was playing on my phone. And that's how I got through it.
Okay.
I have a big long thing on my phone. MJ made popsicles. Stuff like that.
That's funny. But I love that's the self-management that's so critical. That is a thread also you'll hear through the different stories and podcasts we have. But that must have been really challenging. So yeah.
So we got a little bit left.
Well, I want to hear Morgan.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Morgan.
partner.
Sorry.
How was it like inviting Mel to see partner? Like how were you thoughtful about that? How they met. I know that it might have been difficult, but whatever you want to share around that, what's your thinking around that?
Yeah, I think, it was, I will give Andrea all the props in this situation. She has been nothing but gracious and wonderful towards a really difficult, extremely difficult situation. Like I am just hands down, Andrea has been incredible in that. So I would say she really gets most of it. And, I was very guarded in kind of because Andrea and I got divorced. My partner and I were still involved, but you just don't know what's going to happen. And I didn't want to set Mel up to get to know someone else that she might not have a real relationship with, because I didn't know if the relationship was going to work. And so I was very cautious, and I was very much concerned of like, I don't want her attached to someone that's not going to be accountable to her and to me and to our family, and putting down some pretty strong boundaries, and it's really worked. And I think to MJ's credit, like he has really risen to the challenge of trying to be a good, like he's a co-parent, but he's not, because he doesn't have a say in what happens. He doesn't get to determine anything. Like Andrea and I are the determining factors of everything for Mel. He has to, kind of just be on the sidelines. He really has no control because he's the one that really can't say anything. But it's definitely been tough, but it's also been really great in terms of he's someone that she can go to in ways that she doesn't have to be afraid of how it'll impact Andrea and I.
Sure.
And that is like, I'm hoping that she goes to him if she's having something scary happen, like she wants to try smoking weed or something, and she doesn't want to tell me, and she doesn't want to tell Andrea. She has a third person that she can maybe talk to. And to me, that's like,
Right.
yeah. And that to me is like safety. It's almost like a triangle of like someone, if Andrea and I don't pick up something, he'll pick it up, he'll perceive it, or he'll be able to, just be there if she needs someone else to talk to.
Good.
That's dope.
That's really dope.
That's dope.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack. I know we're running out of time though. But Jeffrey, did you have any other questions?
No, this has been very informative. I almost feel like we need more time. Like to really unpack everything. Because me personally, I haven't been exposed to this type of information, so I'm really learning a lot, and I really appreciate both of you for sharing your stories, even though it could be kind of tough, especially from a perspective. But I appreciate y'all doing that for us. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Is there anything else weighing on your hearts that you want to share? Anything that you think could help other parents out there as they're navigating co-parenting?
Sage wisdom.
Yes.
Just breathe.
There you go.
I love it. I actually do.
Yeah.
About that. What about you, Morgan?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel a lot of I feel a lot of admiration for Andrea. Like I respect her. I really like, I think that my care for Andrea's happiness in this family is a big part of it. Like, I don't want Andrea to be miserable. I want to try to make it so she enjoys this parenting as well. And I think that's a big part of it is having a real respect, which can be hard. Like, I am very lucky too. Andrea is very stable. She's very loving. Like, it's a different story if you have someone on the other side that isn't as stable. But yeah, I really just have a lot of respect for Andrea, and I think it really helps me know that she's going to do what's in Mel's best interest.
Yeah, likewise. It's nice to trust. A lot of people didn't want me to trust you, but I knew that I could, and it's really worked out.
And that's another, you just touch on something, because these voices on the outside, like people who don't get co-parenting, who haven't seen it done well, like as I'm, navigating my relationship with my ex's girlfriend, I told us all as we were meeting together for the first time, like, forget everything you know about co-parenting, baby mama, baby daddy drama, like, throw it out the window. Because and I've had friends be like, no, you should interpret what she says this way, or like, don't trust, or, oh, she's gonna step on your shoes. And I'm like, I don't listen to that. Because they don't know what I'm trying to do here, which is trying to keep a positive, uplifting space for, all of the co-parents involved, as well as obviously for my son. And so I'm like, you're touching on, like, okay, some people have their different perspectives. Like, if it's not going to help you guys take the next step forward, then forget about it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, like, extended family, the idea of like that non-nuclear family, I think is really important too, is not seeing it as like there's only supposed to be a certain amount of people in a family, but being like, we're all part of this family. We're all here to try to support her. And it's not that anybody should have a certain spot and someone else should have a different one. It's that the more people you got loving a kid, the more people you got loving a kid.
Right.
Absolutely.
It takes a village.
It really, really does.
Right, and we call ourselves Team Dior, and so even my ex's girlfriends, like, she's like, I'm so glad to be like joining Team Dior,
well, that's
right?
good.
Like I said, it's not just like the lovers of the world, right? It's like my mom and like other people and cousins and close friends. They all get to be part of Team Dior, and so Team Mel.
Yep.
Well, it's nice to meet Team Mel. That's the
Yay.